Can you imagine someone, in the silence of the night, unable to sleep because of you? That's what happened. Without warning, without planning, this person simply got up. The longing was too great. The pillow seemed heavy, the room too small, and the clock, a cruel enemy marking each second of distance. It was at that moment that something happened. The heart took control. And then, without hesitation, they decided to do something no one would expect. In the middle of the night, in the cold street, with the lights off in the surrounding houses, this person was there, driven by you, the key in hand, the heart racing. It didn't matter what lay ahead. It didn't matter the time, the fatigue, or the doubts. It was you. You were the reason, the destination, the purpose. At the door of your house, a single explanation: I couldn't wait until tomorrow. And then you understand. It's not the words, nor what was brought, perhaps a flower, maybe just a gaze. It's the gesture, it's the courage. It's love, pure and true. Now tell me, how would you react if someone crossed the night just to show how important you are? What would you do if you were the reason for something so unusual? That's what love is. It's urgency, it's courage, it's action. Think about this. While you slept, completely unaware of what was happening outside the walls of your room, there was someone out there living a storm of emotions. It wasn't a literal storm, but an internal conflict that transformed everything into chaos and urgency. This person was restless, taken by an almost impossible-to-contain desire, which grew every second, making any rational thought a faint and distant voice. It was as if the entire universe conspired for this moment to happen. The world was silent, the city asleep, but this person's heart was beating loudly enough to break any silence. And it was in this whirlwind of emotions that a decision was made. It wasn't something simple, it wasn't something small, it was the decision to act. This person wasn't sure how you would react. There was fear, of course. The idea of ringing the doorbell in the middle of the night, of risking appearing impulsive, of perhaps even being misunderstood, lingered in their mind. But love. Ah, love is stronger than any fear. When it is genuine, it doesn't care about the consequences. It just wants to manifest, just wants to exist, just wants to be recognized. So, picture the scene. The empty streets, lit by streetlights casting long, lonely shadows on the cold ground. This person was crossing the city, not out of obligation, but because they simply couldn't hold it in any longer. Each kilometer traveled was not just a physical distance, but an emotional journey. There were doubts, there was anxiety, but above all there was determination. Meanwhile, inside the car, the radio might have been playing some song, but it wasn't heard. The thoughts were too loud. The hands on the steering wheel trembled slightly, as if they carried the weight of a moment that was about to change everything. The head was filled with possibilities. What if I knock on the door and there is no answer? What if I am being dramatic? What if this doesn't mean as much to them as it means to me? But there was another voice, one that refused to be silent. It was the voice of certainty, the voice that said, love cannot be left for later, that there is no tomorrow for someone who feels something so strong, that it is now or never. And it was that voice that prevailed. When the doorbell rang, it was like crossing an invisible line. The world seemed to stop for a moment. There was no more sound, no more cold, no more doubts. There was only the moment. And then you opened the door. You might be wondering how it went. Maybe you imagine a perfect rehearsed dialogue like in the movies, but the truth is that love is rarely like that. It isn't clean, tidy, or carefully planned. It's raw, real, direct. And that's exactly what happened. This person looked at you and for a moment seemed speechless, not because there was nothing to say, but because no words seemed enough to capture what was being felt. There was something in their eyes that spoke louder than any phrase could. Something that said, I needed to be here. I needed to see you. And with a trembling voice came the confession, I know it's late. I know maybe I should have waited until tomorrow, but I couldn't. I needed to tell you that you're all I can think about. There was something so honest, so visceral in those words that it was impossible not to feel the impact. It wasn't a speech. It wasn't a request. It was just the truth, raw and real, delivered there in the middle of the night, at your doorstep. Now pause for a moment and put yourself in this person's place. Can you imagine the courage that requires? The vulnerability of exposing oneself in this way, with no guarantees of how it will be received. It's not easy. In fact, it's one of the hardest things a person can do, because love, when it's true, puts us in a position of complete surrender. It makes us let go of our barriers, our defenses, and simply throw ourselves into the unknown. It transforms us into courageous beings, even when we are terrified. And that's what this person did for you. Not because they wanted something in return, not because they expected a grand gesture back, but simply because they could no longer carry all of it alone. It was as if their heart was overflowing, and the only way to lighten the load was to share it with you. Do you know what makes this gesture so powerful? It's not the act itself, but what it represents. It represents someone who chose you, someone who put you above pride, fear, and convenience, someone who was willing to go out in the middle of the night, face their own insecurities, and ring your doorbell not knowing what would happen. And that's rare. In a world where people often hide what they feel, where it's easier to send a cold message on the phone than to open up face to face, a gesture like this is an exception. It's proof that there are still people willing to fight for what they feel. Now I want you to think about something. If you were in this person's place, would you have done the same? Would you have left the comfort of your home, faced the night, overcome your fears, all for someone? And even more importantly, how would you react if you were the one who opened the door? If it were you who received this unexpected visit, would you recognize the value of that gesture? Would you understand how much it means? True love, the kind that takes our breath away and makes us act without thinking twice, is not something that happens every day. It's rare, it's precious. And when it appears, it demands that we see it, value it, and embrace it. Maybe you've never gone through something like this. Maybe you've never felt something so intense or been the target of such a pure gesture. But if it happens, I want you to remember this story. I want you to remember that behind every gesture like this, there is someone putting everything at risk for you. And the question that remains is, what will you do when it's your turn? If you've made it this far, I want you to reflect. Is there someone in your life whom you love so much that you would be capable of something like this? Someone for whom you would face the world, even if it were just to show how important that person is to you, or maybe it is you who is waiting for a gesture like this. Someone who deep in their heart longs to be chosen, to be the reason for something so unusual, so intense, so special. Whatever the answer may be, the most important thing to remember is that love is not something that should be postponed. It does not wait, does not obey the clock, does not follow rules. When it happens, it demands action, it demands courage, it demands presence. And now I ask you, are you prepared to live a love like this? The silence of the night still echoed within that small scene, but it was no longer the same silence as before. It now carried weight, expectation, intensity. The street outside remained empty. The stars still twinkled in the unmoving sky. But inside you, something was different. Something was beginning to take shape. A mixture of surprise, confusion, and perhaps a touch of emotion that you did not yet know how to name. The person in front of you, standing there with their eyes fixed on yours, seemed vulnerable. It was as if they had stripped away all layers of security, as if there was nothing left to protect their heart from the impact of your response. And that is precisely where the weight of the moment lies. It is not just about what they did, it is about what this demands from you. I had to do this, you understand? Their voice breaks the silence, low, laden with a sincerity that is almost uncomfortable. There is no hesitation, but neither is there imposition. It is a confession, raw and simple. And that is exactly what makes everything so real. There are no flowery speeches, no rehearsed promises. There is only what is happening there, at that moment, the weight of a heart handed over. But what do you do with this? That is the question that lingers. Because upon receiving this gesture, you automatically become part of it. You are the motive, the reason, the destination. And suddenly, you find yourself thrust into completely new territory, where your choices matter more than ever before. Think about all of this. Someone stepped out of their comfort zone. Someone took a risk, crossed boundaries that many would never dare to cross. Someone decided to face the fear of looking foolish, the risk of being rejected, the possibility of a devastating no, and all of this for you. Now imagine what that person was feeling while doing this. With each step, their heart probably beat faster. Their mind, even though filled with courage, was flooded with doubts. It is not easy to put oneself in such a state of vulnerability. It is not easy to lower defenses and completely surrender to a moment. But love, love is stubborn. It doesn't care about what is easy. It does not seek the safest path. It does not obey the rules of reason. It wants to be lived, and that is exactly what this person did. They chose to live what they feel for you, regardless of the consequences. You, standing in the doorway, may not have said much yet. You may still be trying to process all of this, and that is normal. It is normal to be caught off guard by such an intense gesture. But what happens next is what defines everything, because love, as beautiful as it is always a two-way street. It cannot survive on its own. It needs to be welcomed, nourished, reciprocated in some way. It doesn't mean that you need to immediately return a gesture of the same intensity, but it does mean that you need to recognize what is in front of you. If there is something life teaches us, it is that moments like this are rare. How many people do you know who would be capable of something like this? How many times have you lived or heard of a gesture so genuine, so free from pride, so full of truth? The truth is that we are used to living on the surface, to keeping what we feel, to protecting ourselves behind cold messages or calculated responses. People who expose themselves in this way, who cross the night to ring a doorbell and say, "I needed to be here," are different. They are the type of people the world desperately needs, but that few have the courage to be. And that is why your reaction matters so much. It's not just about saying thank you or closing the door and going back to bed. It's not about shirking or pretending nothing happened. It's about recognizing what was placed there in front of you. It's about seeing the magnitude of what was done for you. You might feel like you don't know what to say, but sometimes words aren't even necessary. A gesture can be more meaningful than 1,000 phrases. A hug, a look, a simple "I understand" are enough to show that you not only heard, but felt, that you recognize what is happening. Because deep down, all this person wanted when knocking on your door was this: to be heard, to be recognized, to know that they were not wrong in believing that what they feel for you is worth it. Now let me ask you something. What does love mean to you? It's easy to say that love is beautiful, that it is essential, that it is the force that moves the world. But have you ever stopped to think about what it demands from those who feel it? Love is not just a beautiful emotion, it is courage. It is sacrifice. It is facing the unknown without guarantees, without maps, not knowing what comes next. And that is what makes gestures like this person so special. Not because they are grand in the traditional sense, but because they are real. Because they are sincere. Because they come from a place within the heart that many are afraid to access. Perhaps at this moment, you are still thinking about how to react. Maybe you're wondering what this means for you, for the relationship you have, or could have. And that's okay. We don't always have all the answers right away, but there's something you need to remember. Love doesn't wait. It happens, and it's up to us to decide whether to embrace it or let it pass by. This person standing there before you has already made their choice. They chose you. They chose to put what they feel above any fear or doubt. And now, the choice is in your hands. Can you imagine what the world would be like if more people had this courage? If we were all capable of giving in to what we feel, of acting out of love, of showing each other how important we are. Unfortunately, most people prefer to wait. Wait for the right moment. Wait for safety. Wait for tomorrow. But what this person did for you is proof that true love doesn't wait. It acts. It moves. It challenges conventions and makes us do things we never thought we could do. And honestly, don't we all wish for that? Someone who truly chooses us, who places us at the center of the universe, even if just for one night. So I ask you again, how will you respond to this? How will you handle the fact that tonight someone crossed barriers for you? Because at the end of the day, love always requires reciprocity, not necessarily in the same measure, but in the same essence. It asks that you be present, that you be open, that you be willing to feel, to live, to allow yourself. And above all, it asks that you have courage. Courage to recognize what is right in front of you. Courage to say yes to what life is placing in your path. Courage to be human in your fullest, most authentic, most vulnerable form. This person has already shown all this courage, and now it's your turn. So what will you do? Tell me, are you willing to open the doors not only of your house but also of your heart? Are you willing to appreciate a gesture that, though simple, carries the weight of a genuine feeling? Or will you let this moment pass like so many others that life offers us, but that we often lack the wisdom to seize? The choice is yours. And remember, love does not wait. It lives. It happens. And when you least expect it, it could be the most important moment of your life. Love is courage. It is acting without waiting. Comment: I believe in love. Like and subscribe.